Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona Chin, co-founder of the Kidney Disease Solution, the Kidney Mastery course, Kidney Coach, and our supplements Genesis. And I'm joined again today by the lovely, stunning, beautiful, smart, intelligent Jessianna Seville. She is the CEO, lead, and managing director of Kidney Nutritional Institute over there in the US, doing really great things as a renal dietitian and really changing the language and foundations on what's possible with kidney disease, and is highly involved in getting clinical trials off the ground and really doing, just like, I don't know if I always say it, but really just getting this information out there in a way that nephrologists and people can digest the science of it. So thank you for being you and doing all of that. I know how hard that can be to swim against the current sometimes.
Well, it's always good that I can pitch some ideas of you, so I always appreciate that.
Yeah, we always like bouncing good ideas around. So anyone that hasn't watched, we put up a podcast a week or so ago with Dr. Rick Cohen talking about the importance of protein amino acids in kidney disease. And Jess was like, I think we should cover this article that I found. And then it's a perfect follow-on. So this is going to be a great conversation. But the main topic of this conversation is, can you actually improve eGFR? Like, what is the science saying? Because Jess and I say this in pretty much every podcast. We see it in our patients. I just got off filming a great testimonial with Linda Graybill, who will have that up on our platform. She went from being on the list for a transplant to them calling her. She's like, don't need a transplant now. I've got my eGFR. She's up at 27 now from a 14 or something like that. So we see it all the time, but we wanted to talk about the science behind that, what's possible, and all of those good things. So Jess, I'm going to hand it across to you to introduce this topic, and let's plop through it. But you had a great study you wanted to talk about that shows exactly this, that eGFR in fact does improve.
Yeah, so there's a study. I'll just pop it here on my screen and then come off. But if you are a study reader, you can go check this out. So I was looking for some studies that validated that GFR improves, because I see it, and I wish I had published on all the people we see like officially in a journal, but I haven't, and I wanted to just see what was out there. So this study came up. It's from 2013, and it is done. A lot of the researchers are out of France, so this is a French group looking at their French studies. And I loved the title of it. When I read it, I was like, that's so bold. And you shouldn't think that I'd be so excited about it, but the general dogma, the general information that is given to patients, and I'll share a story in a second about that, is that if you have kidney disease, like, just hurry up and wait till you're on dialysis or need a transplant. Like
100%.
Like guaranteed, right? Slippery slope. So to have, and that's across the world, right? We work with people and patients and clinicians and, physicians all across the world. And that is basically the story. And
Yep.
Like all of nephrology, worldwide, global nephrology is the story. So to have an article that totally confronts this, renal function can improve at any stage of kidney disease, it really made me pause, and I was like, okay, like, how are they making such a bold claim? And what they did in this study that was really interesting is they had 406 patients, and they were primarily looking at stage 4 and 5, which was really important, because if you look at how like the inner workings of the nephrology world, they're really focused on stage 4 and 5 because there's a lot of reimbursement benefits from improving function here. So I looked at their patients, and without getting into too much of the nitty gritty here, they had 12 patients that they took out because they must have had like some crazy stuff going on with their labs. And they were looking at some therapeutic targets that were achieved. So they're looking at blood pressure, proteinuria, so protein in the urine, which is a predictor of the kind of the speed of progression that you're going to have, and the use of these renin-angiotensin system blockers for blood pressure. Anyways, so what they saw, and at first you're going to say, oh, that's so small, I don't have a chance, but we'll expound on this. So what they saw in this study is that 15% of the patients improved 332 were considered non-improvers, but they had published data that stage 4 and 5, there were people that improved. Now, they didn't dig in a lot, I felt like, in the patient onto why people improved. They just said that there were people who improved, and the people that improved in their GFR, you also saw that they had, and it's, I don't know, the chicken or the egg is here, but they had fewer CKD-related metabolic complications, and they had a lower prevalence of vitamin D deficiency. Like, they picked this one nutrient. They're like, oh, and most people were vitamin D deficient. Still important, right? They were trying to find like some dots to connect. And anyway, so that's kind of the basis of this study. I think it's really important that we see the data that people do improve. And this probably was with standard of care. So even like standard of care, some people can improve. So it's not accurate to say that people aren't going to improve their GFR, because people absolutely can. What may not be true is that, if you really kill your nephrons off, our body doesn't necessarily regenerate them. I think the science is probably, on the horizon there with peptides and such. But there is a point of improvement where maybe you can't improve all the way, but you can improve. And there's things that you can do to set a foundation that allows your body to heal. There's a lot of things that you can do to set a foundation so your body can reduce scarring. And like we see it in the data. So.
Well, I think that's super important, because I think the blanket statement that goes out that once your eGFR starts to decline, that's the trajectory. And as we always say, you're going to end up with dialysis or the transplant. Now, we know with just normal standard of care, be it blood pressure medication, diabetic control, whatever that it was, that they had 13% improved. Now, imagine now when we add all the things that we know, be it herbal medicine, dietary changes, all of those sort of things, what those numbers would actually look like with other interventions that we definitely know are working, because I know you see this. Yeah. So they've not any additional digging in with that stuff. So
yeah, I'd agree. And they also excluded from the study, they excluded folks with PKD, because and this was 2013, right? So it's typically thought, oh, if you have PKD, you're on like a progression, like you're on a progression road, you're going to end up dialysis and transplant unless you're a slow progressor. But now we know that there's probably more that we can do with metabolic health and looking at oxalates. So even for PKD, that story has changed. And, I just think there's a lot. So if you're listening to this, you've been told you can't improve your GFR. To me, I always think, if I had kidney disease, and I do not have kidney disease, but if I had kidney disease, I would want every choice, every opportunity, every strategy that can put me in that 15% bucket. And probably more could improve, but like, I don't want to be told that there's no hope. It's really important to hang on to that. There are things you can do, and even you take 5% from doing this strategy, and 5% from this, and 5% from this. All these little things stack up, and you're always moving in a progression towards health.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it was interesting. Like I say, I've just done a testimony with Linda, and she said just that. She would go around and she realized that her transplant team weren't talking to a nephrologist, weren't talking to a cardiovascular cardiologist, weren't talking to her endocrinologist with diabetes. So she carries around the folder and had to inform everybody. And she said, healing for her, yes, she put in the herbs in Kidney Prime, and she drinks the Nana's tea, changed her diet. She was put on a diabetic diet, realized she needed to marry it with a renal diet. But really for her, it was this whole doing bits and pieces. She had to learn to like herself and love herself more, and feel like she had to do the mental emotional stuff. So, bits of everything, and finding what it is that works for you, or the big things that make a big difference, are so important, because we do know that has an impact. And we know that, the standard of things that are coming out of these studies, these people aren't doing any of these other interventions that we would talk about, which is where we see a huge amount of healing. And to the vitamin D point in that study, it's really interesting, because when I've dug in and when I wrote the mastery course that we've got online, what I found was vitamin D deficiency will predict the outcome of kidney disease fairly accurately that people with vitamin D deficiency, and I'm going to make up the numbers, but they were like 75 to 80% more likely to end up with kidney disease, and it's due to the relationship between vitamin D and phosphorus, the FGF23 pathway, and clotho. And we know, and they're complicated pathways, so I won't get into them, but clotho, we know, is an early determinant of people getting kidney disease, and it sits on a seesaw with phosphorus. So when your phosphorus levels go up, and that can be from dairy's very high in phosphorus, red meat's very high in phosphorus, those sort of things, that when you get this imbalance in phosphorus, your clotho inversely will go down. And clotho is hugely, it's a peptide and used inside the body. You can take it exogenously as well, but it's hugely protective against kidneys. And Jess and I have talked about this before, that if we had an accurate test for clotho, which we don't, it again will pick up kidney disease 5 to 10 years before it actually manifests inside the kidneys. And that's the vitamin D point in there, is it changes that metabolism with phosphorus. So it doesn't surprise me that vitamin D deficiency
was one of the markers they pulled out. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense to me.
And it's of all the like tests that I'd say it's so easy for my patients to get, vitamin D is like the easiest. And doctors are very accepting of getting a vitamin D level and accepting of treating it. And so I think if you haven't ever had that done and kidney disease, and you're looking at kidney disease, that's easy, inexpensive, like intervention that you can start with, and this principle of 5% actually came from one of my patients. I love this lady. She, I'll just tell just a little bit of brief background to launch into this, but when she was 24, she was diagnosed basically with terminal cancer. And she's like, well, and she's now 70 plus. She's like, she did not die from terminal cancer. But she's like, if that's like the course I'm going to go, I have got nothing to lose. And so like she overcame that. And over her life, she's had these health things pop up here and there. And a lot of her journey has been about, number one, self-love, which is actually, I feel like, a really important part of healing, hope and self-love. But also it has been at taking something that most people say, oh, that's not really going to make a difference. Oh, it's a super small study. Oh, that's just in animals. Oh, this, oh, that. Like, it doesn't have a massive double-blind placebo-controlled trial. And she's like, I might as well just try it, because even if I'm a 5% gain, then I want to be a 5% gain. And she's like, and it's kind of fun too. Like, she's like a fun biohacker in her own way. And she's like, it's kind of fun for me. Like, it's fun for me to like try something. And if it's not going to hurt me, and she's real good about talking with experts, if it's not going to hurt me and it might help me, it's fun just to try it. And to like, she always says, I love to just play in my kitchen. I love to like experiment. And she does. And she actually reversed her kidney disease. We did some functional work, and she's now stage 2. I just saw her last week. I went and visited her in her home. And it was so interesting as I went through, like, we reviewed her supplements, just kind of like talked. We actually talked the whole day. But when I really went through it, I was like, wow, you have come so far in the last 3 years. Like, some of these supplements, I don't think you need them anymore. Like, I think you're really stable. I think like you are in such a good place of healing. Like, so great. 75. So.
And what stage was she when you first started working with her?
She was stage 3 and declining. And she had a whole bunch of like stuff going on. It's kind of come out of a stressful time of life. And she just kept chipping away at it. Chipping away. And now stage 2, and like kidney disease is, to me, not really like it's not staring her in the face in a scary way anymore.
No, it's amazing. Well, I love that. And it's funny, like I say, I just finished doing a podcast with Linda, and she said exactly the same thing. Self-love, self-acceptance was a big part of her healing. So
really huge.
Fascinating. They're both saying that. And same thing, just finding those, because if you find enough 5%ers, you're going to get to 100%. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you just stack them all up. It's a small thing. So I guess the big thing to come out of that study, Jess, is that there is hope. And these are, again, people that may have just done standard of care and not even adding all these other amazing things on. Is there anything else in that study that jumped out at you as information that would be important for people to understand when it comes to healing?
I was just seeing if there was another piece that I wanted to make sure that I pulled out of this. I mean, the big thing to me is that some of these improvements also weren't very big, but they still improved, and that was really important. So they looked at this study. I was just pulling down through some of the charts. So they looked at anemia, right? And more people on the improvement side had better controlled anemia, but that, that makes sense. We've talked about that before. They did look at, which you've mentioned many, many times, and which you mentioned at the beginning of this bone mineral metabolism, to see where people were at with phosphorus and this. I mean, if you just look at phosphorus, the non-improvers, it looks like they're just trying to decide what this number is they're using here. Like their average phosphorus was 11.1, and the improvers was like 3.2 or something. And
oh wow, that's a big difference.
That's really big. That seems a little bit high to me, so I'm just wondering if I'm reading this correctly. But if you look kind of down the line on like the measures for bone mineral metabolism, if you look at acid base volume, like they did bone mineral metabolism, acid base, and anemia, and they like kind of looked at those areas in particular, which was so interesting to me because that's what we target, right? We look at what are the opportunities: an alkaline diet, control your anemia, get your micronutrients on point, because bone mineral metabolism is about all your micronutrients. This acid base balance with a good plant animal balance. Like these are things that we target, and they were seeing trends in all of these places. So anyways, it's really super important. The one criticism that I think can come out of a study like this, that comes for a lot of studies where we see, and then just from the dietary side, when we look at diet and we say, oh, people who did this diet, they saw an improvement, is when I've talked to different nephrologists around the world, they'll say, well, maybe diet works, but it's probably just hyperfiltration. It's probably just they cut down animal protein, their kidneys actually didn't get better, it's just hyperfiltration. You'll hear that quite a bit. And even my patients will hear that too. Their GFR will come up and the doctor will be like, oh, it's just hyperfiltration. And I don't know if people always understand what that means or why they would say that, but that'd be a good thing that we could go through.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, I think you and I are on the page that if an eGFR improves, an eGFR improves. Numbers don't lie. And if people really wanted to back that up, they could do a cystatin C or the, I really like this test that you pointed me in the direction of, which is the human transforming factor, growth factor beta, which is your fibrotic marker. I see if you can get the needle to move on that, you really make a big difference and a big dent in kidney disease. But when it comes to hyperfiltration, what they're talking about there is protein in the urine and how that comes through. And if you can get protein in the urine to go down, I'm assuming that's what they mean by hyperfiltration in that. And you and I have spoken about that before. And okay, we might take people off animal protein. So, their protein isn't going through as much. But what we do know with protein is that animal protein is very high in phosphorus. So it's interesting that you point out that people that were the responders, their phosphorus levels had gone down. So, they had lower phosphorus levels. Now, that happens when you really take out things like dairy is very high in phosphorus, and as is red meat. And one of the things we know with this, again, and it fits, and it's a complicated pathway, but we know with the vitamin D, when vitamin D gets disrupted for a long time, it disrupts the way the phosphorus works. Phosphorus works in this FGF23 pathway and clotho. And so red meat particularly is very, very high in phosphorus. So it's not just a hyperfiltration thing. It's obviously this, the more red meat that you take down, you're actually going to be helping by decreasing phosphorus. You allow the body to increase clotho. Clotho, as a protein, will heal the kidneys. It's anti-aging and it protects the kidneys. So there's that. And then the other problem with red meat is very high nitrogen, which is why we use things like keto and things like that. And I think we wanted to talk about this, but Dr. Rick and I spoke about this in the podcast that we did, was that nitrogen, again, causes damage to the kidneys. I think phosphorus is a bigger issue, but again, we talk about treating the person, not the disease, cause, not effect. Because some people get on here, and you and I did the last YouTube video we did was talking about the carnivore diet, and we see a very small percentage of people will improve doing carnivore, and we go, well, that doesn't make sense with everything you've just said. And I would say in that instance, those people have a nitrogen issue, not maybe a phosphorus issue. And what we do know with red meat and nitrogen is that actually plant-based proteins will have more nitrogen. So inside the cells, you only absorb 20% of the nitrogen from plant-based proteins, meaning the remainder 80% gets filtered through the kidneys. And if you've got a nitrogen issue, that will potentially damage them and cause issues that way. Versus nitrogen, say from red meat, is mostly absorbed inside the cells, but you've still got the phosphorus issue. And this is why one diet doesn't work for everybody. When someone says, I've got a miracle cure, it's a carnivore diet, and then one of my other patients tries it and their kidney function, tanks. And I'm like, well, and, you and I aren't huge fans of trialing in end-stage kidney disease a carnivore diet for these reasons.
Yeah, you're nervous.
Yeah. But, the hyperfiltration thing, I go, no, because it's far more technical than that. If you've taken, say, protein out and you've had an improvement in eGFR, good chance is you had a problem with that FGF23 clotho pathway. You're actually sparing your body to be able to upregulate its clotho. And then, and then on top of that, if you add alkalinity and all these other things that we know make a difference, and you get your vitamin D up and you're doing anti-inflammatory things and all the things that at a cellular level will help the nephrons heal, then I go, it can't just be hyperfiltration, because the mechanism behind protein and how its effects on kidneys is far more complicated than just taking out protein in the hyperfiltration event. So that, no, I would say you've got a phosphorus issue that needs to be looked at. And, maybe you do well with some phosphate binders while we work on bone minerals and maybe magnesium and all those things that you and I would think of when it comes to bone mineral balances versus the crude just take out protein. Did I explain that okay? Does that make
Yeah, no, I think it's really good, because if ever you get a good outcome and that outcome is diminished, because sometimes doctors will say, I don't understand how you could even, that's probably not anything. It's not because you worked hard. It's not because you changed what you were doing. Or sometimes I have doctors say, oh, well, it's just because we changed your blood pressure medication. And I was like, well, maybe that does definitely impact it. But give some credit also where credit's due. But I would say, anyways, if you have any improvement, and I know GFR is a funky measure, but usually when you see an improvement in GFR, you're almost always going to see other little things in the labs that have also changed. And maybe they're not a lot. Maybe it's 1 point, 2 points here and there on different markers. All of that is really important to put your stake in that it makes a difference. Again, building that belief and that hope and that momentum on self-healing. It's really important to acknowledge that what you have done makes a difference, because it has. There's no way your labs improve if somewhere there has not been some sort of a change and an improvement, right? Maybe you're just super well hydrated that day. But usually I think you can say that there have been changes. And if you also look back at my energy's better. Oh, and this and that. I'm noticing some improvements. Then your body, you can say my body chemistry is starting to shift and improve. And that, to me, when I see that in my patients, I say, awesome. Because we have a foundation. And if you have a foundation of like, my body's in like a healing mode, if we have this foundation, now we can start building off of that, whether it's with herbal supplements, maybe it's with, a different dietary strategy. Maybe we test and we see something else, but I think there's a lot of things that you can look at from there.
No, I totally agree. And I think what the feedback I get a lot of just about our program is, oh, it gave us hope. And, people say, well, you give people false hope. And I'm like, well, I'd say that's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as false hope. You have hope or you don't have hope. And hope is such a massive springboard in inspiration and motivation to keep going. Because if you don't hear of testimonials like your patient or like Linda, who I just spoke to, or looking at a research paper like the one you shared, if you don't realize what's possible, you're going to believe the narrative that is going around kidney disease, that kidney disease is incurable and you're heading towards a trajectory of transplant or dialysis. Whereas the whole point of these studies and things to go is, no, that's actually not what the science is saying. That's not the narrative. And if we can give people hope, and your labs are feeding that back, and again, you and I are looking at trends in labs, and if you're starting to trend upwards in an eGFR, that's not a hyperfiltration event. That's your kidneys improving. And I think once you start to get that, and you can see it and take everything that you said, taking that back on board and then treading that way, that's how you're going to heal your kidneys. But you have to become your own advocate. You have to be brave enough to say, well, actually, I disagree. This is what it's looking like. And it's, what I hear from a lot of patients and what I see, the ones that do really well get really educated. Like, they know exactly what their labs mean. They've got sort of full charge of that. And it means that they have a better relationship with their doctors because they can have this conversation. And it seems to be that they're better listened to because their doctors or their specialists trust them to be able to do what needs to be done. So
manage that. Yeah, no, I agree. There was a story I heard once about this lady, and she had a really bad pelvic floor collapse after one of her pregnancies, and she loved to run. And she went to the physical therapist, and she's like, look, I know that this looks super bad. Like, I need I'm sorry, let me just back up. What I need you to do is to believe in me and give me tools to work on this. And then what I need to do is do the work and believe in myself. And she's like, but what I don't want you to do is to look at my situation, which I know looks really bad and it looks like I won't ever run again. What I don't need you to do is look at my situation and give me this big old reality check that means that diminishes the amount of opportunities or tools or ideas I might have to actually see an improvement. And it's always stuck in my head, this story of how she said, I need you, like, I need help, right? I'm going to need help from you as a clinician. I need your expertise. What I need, along with your advice, is I need your belief, because then we can try stuff. And she did eventually heal her pelvic floor issue, was able to get back to running. So, and that's really powerful, right? Because then you can try stuff.
So powerful. What a great way to just rewrite the narrative around what's possible. And imagine because we know nocebo, the nocebo effect is as powerful as the placebo. And we know from, people diagnosed with cancer and say they've got 3 months to live and they drop dead 3 months later, go in and have an autopsy and they've had cancer. They just heard what the doctor said and took that on. So if you have a doctor or a specialist say to you, okay, these are all the ways that we can support you, just like you said. When there's a way, the brain, it's really interesting how the brain works. The brain, when it's in fight or flight, can't be creative and can't come up with new solutions. When you have a brain that is like your patient, where she's curious and she's like, I don't want that put on me, you can find more solutions. The brain, that's what it is looking for. But if you're in a continual fight or flight, I'm going to die, this is whatever, the brain shuts down those possibilities. And I think it's really important that we as clinicians don't shut down our prefrontal cortex in our patients so they don't come up with these ideas, and that we as clinicians don't put worst case scenario on people, because people surprise you. We've got studies with people maybe just doing very simple things with a 15% improvement. Imagine if just the language in our communications as clinicians, that alone would increase that. And I think that's really important and I know it's something at the forefront of my mind when I'm working with patients,
Yeah.
is that you meant to hold the space for hope and healing for people. And that's our role.
Yeah, I agree. And along with this, I think there is a place for people also to make sure that they have plan A, B, and C. You can always work towards plan A, but it's good to have plan B. So for our patients that come in and they said, hey, like my GFR is 10, they say I have to get a transplant tomorrow. But I don't want to get a transplant. I just want to like improve my kidney function. Usually my advice to them is we're going to do everything we can to improve your kidney function. And that is really important. And I believe this can work. However, I think it would be I think it's really important that you get the transplant in your back pocket. You don't have to ever take that transplant, but sometimes even transplant workup can be part of a healing journey because you find stuff that you wouldn't find otherwise.
Exactly.
And to me, that's a really important thing too, because I really believe in this power of hope, self-love, in a healing process. But I also think it's really good on a practical basis, and it gives you security, right? Like, I feel like if you have a plan and you feel safe with, if this happens, then this will happen. If this happens, then this will happen. You don't have to think about it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So if you're just like, okay, I'm just going to do the transplant workup, and like, that's where it's at. I have some people that they will even get an access. They're really low function. And they say, well, I'm just going to, we have one lady we worked with for 3-4 years or so, and she got a PD access and she never used it ever. But she got it done and she had her plan C, right? She had her plan C just in case. And taking those steps, just because you take a step to be ready for dialysis or you take a step to be ready for transplant, doesn't mean you have given up on improving your kidney function. It just means you have a plan in place so you don't have to constantly have that nagging voice in the back of your head of that worry. And I think that's important. And sometimes, for some people, the transplant is the healing process for them. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Okay. Sometimes dialysis is a bridge till people get to transplant. And that's okay too. So just like put those options in line, not because you're scared, just because you want to be prepared. And then you can really focus on being able to improve your health overall.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think that's the key, isn't it? So it's just about having all that basis, but at least in those, you've got B and C, you can then put all your energy into A because you can drop back. And again, that's about taking people out of fight or flight because you've got a really robust plan. I'm a big advocate for that stuff. Anything else you want to add to this, Jess? Because I think this has been a really important discussion that I put a post up on our website about and shared this same article and another one, but I think it's really important to have these conversations that people know what is possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is that, if I were to recap it, that when you work towards improving your kidney function, you're going to work towards improving your overall health, and it doesn't, like, that is a win no matter what. So there's no reason not, right? Like, don't let the kidney disease write your story. Like, you write your story, and maybe kidney disease is kind of the impetus for a health improvement. All of us have things like that, right? All of us have things that happen in our life, happen in our health in different ways, where we have to kind of step back and reevaluate our choices and what we really want in life. So let kidney disease be part of your story, but don't let it write your story for you, because I think you can write your own story, right? And there's professionals out there. There's amazing physicians out there that will support you, give you feedback, and it's okay to talk to them directly. Like, I know that it doesn't look like I'm going to improve. I really want you to support me in monitoring and management, and just put that aside for me. Because I know maybe it will happen, but just like put it aside for me. But I think those are all like really important. And then see what the possibilities bring. Keep an open mind. If you're trying something that you just read online, especially if it's kind of a wild herbal treatment, that's not like what you guys do. I love what you guys do because I know you guys have like researched it and it's super positive. But like if you're gonna do something really, really interesting or strange, just make sure it's got like some backing behind it and some professionals like you guys that know what you're doing, because there can be some weird stuff out there. But always be open and looking for what the solution is for you, because there are solutions and everybody is different. So there are some things that work for some people that don't work for others. And I found that patients even, like, I don't mean to be like woo woo and like weird, but I find that patients are almost sometimes guided to where they need to go when they keep an open healing mindset.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Sometimes stuff just pops up and people just say, I just knew I had to follow that. So,
yeah.
So if people want to get in contact with you or the team, they can head to kidneynutritionalinstitute.org. I'll put the details below. But you work with people right around the world with the wonders of Zoom and telehealth and all of those great things. And you've got an amazing team with you. So anything else you want to add before we finish here, Jess?
Nope, I think that's it. But just believe in kidney health, not kidney disease, and like work towards that angle.
Yeah, it's perfect. All right. Well, make sure you hit like, subscribe. That way you'll get notified anytime we put up new content. If there's anything you want Jess and I to talk about, plop that in the comments below. We can make sure that we do some content around that. Thanks again for being part of our community. If you want to know more about what we do, head to www.kidneycoach.com. You'll find us on Facebook and Instagram as well. And again, I'll put the details of Jess and Kidney Nutritional Institute down there. They're a great group of people there that can help anybody over in the US or around the world if people want more support. So thanks again for being part of our community, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
Sounds good. Thank you.